trying to say that's only 3 data points, which is a low enough sample size to be a coincidence. If half the rooms were traps, they could only be 87.5% confident in this method, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. This whole time I've been speculating that the numbers mean something, and I think what she's onto is worth testing, but you'll only know if the theory holds up with a high degree of confidence once you've tested at least 10 rooms. But even then, the cost of physically checking a room is low, so you might as well sniff, slap, and boot every room anyways. The montage of them navigating rooms seems pretty convincing that prime numbers are the key to detecting traps, so they seem to have solved the trap detection problem, but they still haven't solved the exit path problem. Since there really isn't anything else they can use to determine an exit path, and the numbers were a form of key to half their problem, it's likely the numbers are also a key to the other half of their problem. It's a good thing Red got base-shotted instead of Levin, because there's no way they would have figured that out by themselves. On that note, they need to keep Levin alive at all costs, because she's probably their only chance of figuring out a way out of here. With the trap detection problem solved, they should continue heading towards the side of the cube so they can map out the potential dimensions of the main cube. Eventually, they hit a dead end with traps on all sides and are forced to backtrack. By now, they're probably getting claustrophobic, dehydrated, and a little bit delirious. This is where line markers would be nice to have. It would help lower the mental burden of having to do math and double-checking each room you may have already been in. Their detour around the dead end is put on pause when they hear some noises coming from the cube above them. Quentin pops the door, and another person falls through. His name is Kazan, and he appears to have some type of mental disorder. On a side note, it's interesting how all of the captives are named and characterized after famous prisons around the world. Kazan has a mental condition of sorts, which relates to the Kazan Prison Mental Hospital in Russia. Quentin is a male, and Stays Quentin is a prison for males. Likewise, Holloway is a female, and Holloway Prison is female only. Red was named after the Red Prison. Levin and Worth, well, Leavenworth. It's also kind of interesting that Levin and Worth are the only ones that share a prison name. I don't think any of this helps them, though. The captives continue their straight-line path to the side of the cube while checking for prime number-based trap rooms. But this time, there's a problem.
Stop! In front of you.
Exactly why I kept saying to tread carefully. To think that prime numbers solved everything with it being a pretty successful strategy. Luckily for Quentin, this trap gave him time to dive out of the way. The prime number trap detection theory is far from foolproof because there's obviously no significant correlation. It's just likely that there's some caveat or additional piece to it under investigation. Quentin's report reveals that he's an engineer that was contracted to build the shell of this cube. For certain hobbyists, as he pessimistically puts it, he claims he knows nothing of the interior, except that the shell does not seem flush against the cube of cubes. Earth, you goddamn piece of shit. I had a feeling that woe is me garbage was just a projection of guilt, or a diversion from his actual profession and affiliations. When questioned about who was in charge, why the cube was built, and what its purpose is, he goes on a nihilistic tirade that it was just built because we could, that nobody was in charge. It was just a hidden cylinder operating under the illusion of a master plan. Okay, you just admitted that you're a victim of compartmentalization, and now you're claiming to know all about the cube. I'm not buying it. There's no point to being hopeless anyways. Now, armed with the information that Worth has knowledge of the exterior, Levin jumps in to question him further. Worth reveals that the cube is 434 feet square, and that there is likely one cube worth of space between the shell and the main cube, and that there is a door on one side of the shell, but he doesn't know which side it's on. Wow, that was super important information, because that really could have been used earlier. Levin then goes on to measure the interior of the cube to be 14 feet in diameter, and deduces that 27 by 27 cubes would fit flush with the shell, so 26 by 26 cubes would be accurate according to Worth's statement. But 434 divided by 14 equals 31 rooms flush and 30 rooms with space. According to Levin's calculations of 27 rooms flush, 26 with space, that would mean each cube is 16 feet and some change. She's probably assuming 1 foot of hatchway on either side, plus some siding, which makes up the difference. This means there are 17,576 rooms. To put it in perspective, the cube is just a little bit smaller than NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building. It's big, but definitely not 2,000 aircraft carriers. Levin has another epiphany, that the numbers are not just correlated to whether or not the rooms are trapped, but that they might be coded Cartesian coordinates, which are grid coordinates for a three-dimensional space. If you're wondering, she yells take heart because Cartesian coordinates were named after him for his contributions. She thinks that if you add up the numbers in each three-digit sequence, it will provide an X, Y, and Z coordinate. The decoding scheme seems arbitrary and unlikely to be discovered, but for somebody with a math eye, it's still pretty arbitrary and unlikely to be discovered. I guess knowing that the maximum size of the shell is 27 by 27 by 27, and that the number layout coupled with the maximum number sequence that could be 999, 999, 999 might lead her to add up the 9s to get 27 by 27 by 27. This also works because so far they have not come across a zero room number. A negative number would enable the cube to be bigger than 27 cubes per side. This also indicates that the smallest room number that they can come across is 1. The Cartesian coordinate scheme seems to work with everything else they know, but there's still some things that are odd about it. It's worth mentioning that the shell has a door, and there is 1 cube worth of space between the main cube and the shell. According to this Cartesian coordinate scheme, a cube could fill that gap, but if a cube can fill that gap, why is it empty space, according to Mark? Also, room numbers are obviously not Cartesian coordinates of their current location. Every room around them that they've passed through has seemingly random coordinates. If you go in one direction on the x-axis, you should expect that the numbers will increase or decrease, but they don't. Does this mean that the Cartesian coordinate theory is positive? I don't think so. Like the prime number theory, it's most likely just a bit more involved. I think right now it's probably a bit of a stretch, but definitely within the possibility for Levin and Worth to determine that the logic gap between improperly located Cartesian coordinates, the theoretical ability for a cube to be located between the shell and the main cube, and the sound of tremors is that the cubes might be moving and there might be a cube between the shell and the main cube, which could be an exit. Levin misses all of this and decodes their room's coordinates to x equals 19, y equals 26, and doesn't bother with the z-axis. She then announces that there are only 7 rooms from the side. If you thought these numbers were the Cartesian coordinates of this room's current location, wouldn't it be common sense to go up? You don't know which side is the z or x axis, and you don't know if you're going in forward or reverse. You do know up from down, and right now you think you're 26 from 27 total cubes. You should be in the edge or outside of the main cube. Just go up, regardless of where they actually are in the cube. Go to the top side of the cube to confirm the size of the cube, the shell, the space between the cube and the shell. Confirm if any of the cubes are between the cube and the shell, and get a view of 5 out of the 6 sides of the cube. Identify an exit location. Logically, it makes sense that an exit would not be on the bottom, because one shell is 16 feet tall, and that's the height of the gap between the cube and the shell, then you can just drop down to the exit easily with a clothing rope. Also, logically, they would put the exit in the most difficult location to reach, which is probably the roof. Traps are still a problem, but if it's not primed, they can sniff, slap, and boot the room to cut the risk substantially. Eventually, Levin figures out all these issues when the next room has non-sequential coordinates of 14, 27, and 14. This is an incredible piece to the puzzle, though. Before, we could only speculate that a cube could be outside the main cube, but this room is proof that a room could have Cartesian coordinates outside the shell. Knowing that the door is at the shell, and the cube would act as a bridge to it should be pretty obvious at this point. Still, what's it doing here? Obviously, this is not the top of the cube. The largest discrepancy that they need to resolve right now is why the Cartesian coordinates have not matched up with the cube's actual location, because right now they have no idea where they actually are in the cube. After that, figure out why the trap detection method worked and then stopped working. Levin's been finding abstract patterns in the numbers left and right so far. I'm sure something will hit her. The crew disregards the top of the cube as having any merits, and then decides to go downwards. Holloway mentions that the edge...
Nothing brings the pack together like a trip to Great Wolf Lodge.
Giovanni has both killed.
Oh yeah, so Hulk looks like everything.
Increase. So long. Must have missed that.
Chip seems to be surrounded by traps. Quentin agrees and thinks they should cross it anyways. They seem to think that every cube, one from the edge, is trapped, but how could they possibly know this if they have no idea where they actually are? Going downwards is dumb anyways. With patience in ways running dangerously, then they decide to sneak across the cubes, sound activated, kicking off the trap. The problem is, Kazan's Tourette syndrome could cause the trap to activate once they're inside the cube. Personally, I'd put him in a previous room and gag him with a t-shirt. Once everyone's through, Holloway can then bring Kazan across too. You'd better have good proprioception, because if you accidentally knee-knock that wall, you're gonna get run through 7 ways to Sunday. Levin and Holloway both sneak through at the same time, and Worth hops back in to help them, which is really unnecessary and risky to have so many people inside the cube at the same time. Meanwhile, poor Kazan goes the wrong way and gets caught on the door handle, and almost shrieks before Holloway jumps back in to help him. Yeah, Kazan messed up and almost got you killed, but why on earth did you stop when you got to the corridor? You should have just jumped in the hatch immediately. Holloway stops Quentin from beating the hell out of Kazan for almost getting him killed, and a fight ensues between them. The fact that they're right next to the outside of the cube diverts their attention. They open the door and, well, Worth was right. There's a shell 1 cube from the main cube. It's pretty dark, so they decide to fashion a shirt rope and swing Holloway over to see if there's anything out there. Since she's the lightest, and they can't risk Levin's life. What I don't understand is why they all support Holloway like they're playing tug of war. You could easily tie the clothing rope off on any number of things in the cube, while still holding on and bracing yourselves against the hatchway entrance. This would remove the risk of you guys dropping her and give Holloway more slack. I don't understand why Holloway tried to swing to the shell when she can clearly see that it's just a solid wall. If there is a door, it's probably not on this side. Whatever was making the noise at each interval occurs again, causing a tremor that magically makes everyone release their grasp of the rope. While everyone's stumbling around, Quentin jumps for the rope and saves Holloway from falling to death. Wow, that was cold as shit, Quentin. Yeah, you had an argument earlier, but damn, didn't have to do her like that. I saw some people saying that Holloway should have yelled something like, "He's gonna drop me on purpose, please stop him from murdering me." But I doubt she could have gotten a word out before he dropped her. Quentin also stupidly dropped the shirt rope too. It's not like that could have been helpful on their journey. Worth and Levin are suspicious, but they don't know for a fact that he killed Holloway. Everyone's pretty distraught and delirious by now, so they decide to take a nap while listening to creepy-ass theme music. Crazy-eyed Quentin absolutely loses it, tries to take Levin and leave everyone else behind. Worth and Kazan pursue Quentin and save her, but Worth gets his ass kicked and booted into the next cube by Quentin in his illogical search to find the bottom for an exit. To Quentin's dismay, Worth starts laughing maniacally, because the cube he was pushed into contained none other than Ren's corroded corpse. At first glance, it seems they've gone full circle, but it should be obvious that they haven't. They should know that they have not backtracked that much, and that currently they're right next to the edge of the cube, which wasn't the case earlier. It's more likely that the rooms have been moving like the inaccurate Cartesian coordinates have been suggesting all along. I do want to point out that it is extremely lucky that they managed to stumble back into the red room out of 17,576 moving rooms. To most of our protagonists, all hope seems lost, but Worth realizes that they have not gone full circle. He cracks the door open where the Redster got smoked, and yep, now it's just open air. With the moving cubes puzzle piece, Levin is graced with another mathematical revelation. The Cartesian coordinates are indicative of the cube's starting positions. This solves the exit path problem, kind of. Theoretically and empirically, we know that some cubes have starting positions outside the main 26 by 26 cube, like the 142714 cube. According to Worth and our observations, there don't appear to be any cubes that were situated outside the main cube. This indicates that the cubes with the 27 starting location are rare, and possibly only the one they encountered exists. Also, according to Worth, there's one door on the shelf. Since this rare or single cube with a 27 starting coordinate would fit flush with the shell, it's likely that it's a bridge to the shell where an exit would lie, but only when it's in its starting position. Unfortunately, this exit path solution presents more problems. How do they locate a cube when all the cubes are being shuffled around and they only know their starting positions? Knowing that you can navigate a map using permutations of Cartesian coordinates, and since the numbers have indicated everything so far, Levin and Worth figure that the permutations are encoded in these numbers as well. Levin runs through some numbers ideas pretty quickly, so let's break down what she's thinking. She mentions that to find the starting Cartesian coordinates, you add the three-digit number sequences together, find the permutations, and subtract the numbers from each other. Then she says that their current location is 0, 1, and -1 on the x-axis, 2, 5, and -7 on the y-axis, and 1, -1, 0 on the z-axis. Deduce the equation she's using from these numbers. For example, with a root number 242, 536, 645, to decode the Cartesian coordinate starting position, you would do 2 plus 1 plus 2, then 5 plus 3 plus 6, then 6 plus 4 plus 5. This equals 8, 14, and 15. Now, the permutation would be decoded by doing the opposite, sort of. You would subtract each number from each other in the three-digit sequences, like this. This seems to work because each set cancels itself out to 0, meaning that each cube starting and ending positions are the same. To verify her theory, she needs to calculate the permutations of surrounding cubes, not only to determine if they conflict or not, but also to figure out where they are in the cycle, and if they are on the z or x axis. How does this all work? I'll try to explain. Levin asks Worth and Quentin to give her the root numbers of surrounding rooms as a reference point. These are the numbers and thus permutations of the surrounding cubes. We aren't given the root number of their current cube, but we are given the permutations, which are 0, 1, and -1, 2, 5, and -7, 1, -1, and 0. And we are also told by Levin that this room, and in conjunction the bridge room, is 2 movements from its starting position. Before we continue, I want to point out that the numbers provided here never strictly add up. Given the permutation encodings he provided, I have tried a bunch of other wrong. Or there's missing information, or the movie just made mistakes. It's incredibly frustrating to try to make sense of it all, but I'll try to give you my train of thought. Decide if I'm on the right track, or if I'm missing something. To reiterate, to verify her theory, she needs to calculate the permutations of surrounding cubes, not only to determine if they conflict or not, but also to figure out where they are in the cycle, and if they are on the z or x axis. The reference root data is as follows. Try to bear with me here. Like I said earlier, the numbers don't make sense in some spots. Root number 3 will never be on the same y-axis as their current root, so this root should have a different number. Likewise, none of these roots will ever be near the edge of the cube. The work was just seen next to an open door with nothing but air outside. Anyways, to verify her permutation theory, she would need to ensure that there are no conflicting permutations, where 2 cubes would be in the same location at one time. This checks out, thankfully. To figure out where they are in the cycle, she needs to basically find the coinciding permutations that line up on the x and y axis. Worth room number 1 and Quentin room number 2 both line up on the same y-axis as their current room, and are also lined up on either side of their current room on the x-axis, when in the second position. Levin even mentions the room number 172514, though she never told us what that meant. Now we know that she's referring to the Cartesian coordinates of the second position of their current room. She also mentions that the makes 2 more moves before returning to his original position, which is a problem because according to our figures, it should be in 1 move. There's also a second problem too. The current room's permutation Cartesian coordinates are also incompatible. There's no way to produce a compatible room number with both of these decoded sets, but theoretically, this is how you would know your current position in the cycle. Let's just say the movie screwed up and all this should check out. The third thing they need to do is orient themselves correctly, so they need to know which direction is the x-axis and which direction is the z-axis. Using our above calculations, they would know the which x-axis numbers would be the x-axis, and perpendicular to it would be the z-axis. Now, they're properly placed within the cube. Great, the decoding scheme seems to check out, and you ignore a lot of the problems with it. In other words, if you have problems, just ignore them, and everything will check out. With their current location and orientation, they should be able to find the bridge room, right? Yes, but for the wrong reason. The numbers continue to break down and give us more problems. Here's a way to decode the bridge room Cartesian coordinates. The only way to express 27 as a room number sequence is 999, and the permutation for that would be 9 minus 9 plus 9 minus 9 plus 9 minus 9, which equals a 0, 0, 0. This means the bridge cube would not perform its starting position on the y-axis, which means they would never encounter it within the room. If they did somehow stumble into the bridge room, based on this permutation coding scheme, it would be possible not to notice that it is surrounded by air on 4 sides, the ceiling on the top, and the cube they entered from on the bottom. They don't really need to know that. Now that they're oriented to the z and x-axis and at their current location, they can accurately move to the adjacent cubes next to the 14, 27, 14 starting position and just wait for it at their assumed current position of 17, 25, 14. Also, instead of 3 cubes way on the x-axis and 1 cube way on the y-axis, we're going to move the adjacent to the bridge cube in its starting position. But wait, there's more problems. They have no idea what the appropriate timing and sequence is. My calculations based on movie timing, a cube moves every 4 minutes or so, and the late Renster says that they were regular intervals each time. However, this could just be the movements that they were able to notice from their position inside the cube. Cubes could have been moving that they were not able to feel. We know not all cubes move at the same time, and likely only a couple cubes move at a time. Also, the entire time they've been inside the cube, they've never been in a moving cube, which means that independent cubes, like their current cube in the fantastical bridge room, will likely be at different stages in their rotations. It gets worse. According to our permutation theory, each cube can move a minimum of 3 times and a maximum of 9 times before returning to the starting position. However, these could be executed forwards, in reverse, 1 axis at a time, multiple axes at a time, and any combination thereof. With all this shitty incongruent math, and considering that they may be 3 cubes across and 1 cube under where they need to be, I just go topside and wait for the bridge cube to get into position, then break open the side doors and hop in. They need to head topside to get to the bridge anyways, so why stick around doing more math problems? They already know where the puck is going, just skate in that direction. Instead, they obsess over the slightly faulty trap detection method. 4 cubes away is not a problem, with the immensely high probability of the correct trap detection, and their current method of no prime, spin, slap, and boot should be a problem.
You had our last boot, you fucking idiot.
Right, they did lose their last boot. Well, reevaluating trap detection theory still isn't necessary, but screw it, let's do it. Lemon says that at first she thought trap rooms were identified as any 3-digit sequence of the room number was a prime number, but now she thinks that trap rooms are identified based on numbers that are the power of the run. What exactly are you thinking that? This doesn't even make any sense. I swear to God, at this point I think she's just making shit up to sound relevant. But pressure might win to figure out the numbers so they can escape. She retorts,
Factors in each set.
so you can't calculate the factors in each set of numbers to assess whether or not a room is trapped, but somehow you know that this is the solution for trap detection. Okay, the problem is that prime numbers and products of prime powers are different sets of numbers. A product of a prime power can't be prime itself. So if traps were only identified by prime powers, their previous trap detection method would not have worked so well. Prime powers are composite numbers. For example, 5 times 5 times 5 equals 125. This is the product of a prime power, but it's a composite number. I guess that Levin meant that the traps are detected if the number is factors does 30 have? Then he says 3. Worth then gives Kazan the rest of the numbers to the next room. Kazan answers that 898 is 2 and 545 is 2. Levin gasps. He's giving us the factors, except he's not. He's giving you the number of unique prime factors. For example, 567 has 10 factors. 137.
I choose Infamil Inspire with 5 nutrient benefits and as you please attend Herbs 1, 2, investing orange based protein health and balanced words. One of our best.
Which is 2 numbers to a prime. 2 is a prime number. It doesn't indicate a room is the product of a prime power either. So I don't get it. I probably just suck at math and don't understand something. It's not communicating clearly. She's only relying on a savant to compute things based on the funny context she provided. Autistic savants like Kazan often have an extraordinary area of knowledge or ability in a single capacity, but otherwise have immense trouble with understanding things like language. So for him to understand what she's saying is unlikely. Hell, I can't either. Levin then says that based on Kazan's answers, the next room is safe. You're not even going to check his math at all. And even if you did, like your prime number theory, you don't know if it works with any degree of confidence. I mean, there's even less confidence that this method works versus the previous method. And now you don't have a boot to test it. I'd just continue with the old method that had a high confidence and success rate. Technically, you could go back and test the rooms you already know are safe, but since you didn't use line markers, you probably forgot which ones were safe. You could use Ren's corpse as a boot to test the next room, or you could just throw Worth it, I guess. They're going in the Quentin number 2 room direction. According to our previous calculations, this is the right direction if they're heading towards the bridge room. They then progress further into the 15-25-14 room. When Quentin tries to follow them, Worth shoves the door into Quentin's neck. There's that crazy-eyed Quentin. Worth stalls Quentin while Kazan and Levin try to escape into the 14-25-14 room. They should head upwards now, but instead move forward another cube. I'm sure Levin magically figured out some other decoding scheme and knows where the bridge room is, though. Their next move is trapped, so to throw Quentin off their tail, they staged their own trap.
I said, come here right now!
That's clever and all, but super impractical. You have to make sure that Quentin steps on top of the door, then when you try to open the door, it will make a noise, and it has to come out, then slide over. It just wouldn't really work. Movie magic says otherwise, and Quentin fell on his head. The amount of blood coming out of his head, I think they're safe from him now. From their 14-25-14 room, they move across the Z and X axis a few times and reach a giant vertical shaft where cubes should be. So now they've positioned themselves 1 cube across from where the bridge cube's next position will be. The bridge cube comes down to their cube, and they hop into it and right into the pearly gates, supposedly. Interestingly, this cube moved down, then back up, suggesting that the cubes immediately move a full cycle across one axis before rotating across another axis. There was no way of knowing this, so finding the bridge cube again is highly improbable. Kazan failed to make the jump in time, and Levin and Worth's cube move up 1 spot. Worth graciously comes to Kazan's rescue by going left, then down, which doesn't make any sense. While Worth is hauling Kazan's ass back, Levin checks the room number on their current room, 14-26-14. Then she says this room's next move takes them under the bridge room. So this isn't the bridge room. This was the room that cycles next to the bridge room. How are you calculating the timing of all these rotations anyways? I'm having a hard fucking time believing and following any of this.
We should never have moved in the first place.
More like you should have gone topside as soon as Worth told you about the cube and you had discovered the 14-27-14 room. Once their cube's movement is complete, they go across it and open the other side's door to the bridge cube. I swear to God, I must be losing my shit. Before when Levin came across across the 1427-14 room, it was white, and now it's red. What are you all waiting for? Freaking go! These cubes move fast, and you're gonna miss your only chance. Oh, great, now he's sitting down. Here we go again with the Edgar Allan Poe bullshit. The only stupidity I'm seeing here is that the dumbass that helped build this thing is now giving up 2 yards from the end zone. Fine, dude. See you later. No. That's not possible. This dude's head was busted open and bleeding all over from the fall. With his lack of knowledge of math, he'd have definitely run into traps. And Levin, Worth, and Kazan not only moved across numerous cubes, but also those cubes they moved into moved far distances 2 times as well. This epitomizes the incongruency I've been struggling to make sense of this whole movie. Worth doesn't allow Quentin to go free and holds his leg, so Quentin gets caught in between the moving cubes. Kazan is the only one that makes it out alive, though we really can't be sure. The light at the end of the tunnel might be a train and all. The movie ends. Let's recap to see who could have lived or who was destined to die. This has been a long video, so let me be brief. Alderson couldn't have survived. The Wren couldn't have survived. Everyone else shouldn't have survived, and only did so because of plot math. My soul didn't survive. Movies that rely on details and screw those details up are extremely frustrating. How dare they not accommodate two movies that overutilize their own budget due to valid problems? I'd say that due to all the failure and must beat. That's the first time I've said a movie can't be beat. Bravo Q, X-7, and I'd rather take my chances in a zombie apocalypse any day. I know there are sequels, but I'd be lucky to see you by doing a dumb movie next. So let me know what dumb movies you want to see. Thanks for watching, and remember, be nice to nerds.
Let's check in on children's mental health. Join us for Operation Conversation. On our sleeves has free, expert-developed resources to get you and your family talking.
The Platform is a movie about a vertical self-management center, which is a fancy way of saying a prison in the shape of a tower. It's not exactly a prison though, but we'll come back to that. The prisoners, residents, are placed 2 per level for 333 levels. At the core of the plot lies the Platform, which is loaded with a king's feast worth of food every day. Enough to keep all 333 levels alive if rationed appropriately. The Platform is then sent down through a hole in the center of the tower to the peasants, level by level, top to bottom. Every month, the residents are randomly placed on a different level. You could be at the top 1 month, the bottom the next month, or on the bottom 3 months in a row. As you can imagine, people at the top are respectful and humble and ration food for those below them, and those on the lower level are grateful and respectful to those below them as well. Everyone on all levels only takes what they need and are able to get enough calories and protein to survive for that month, as well as enjoy a respectable morsel of dessert foods. Just kidding. The BSC is a sadistic hellhole that extracts and emphasizes the worst aspects and temptations of human behavior. People who find themselves at the top give little shit for those below them, or a lot in some cases. They greedily consume as much as their bellies can hold, and leave no food or dignity for those below them, causing either suicide, starvation, or cannibalism. But why should they care for those below them, as the lower class has no recourse? They can't shit upwards.
The ones above won't listen. Why? Because I can't shit upwards, you see?
And when they had been on the lower levels, nobody spared them, so why should they spare those who didn't spare them? It's a vicious cycle derived from the VSC's rules. If you woke up tomorrow on floor 48 of the Tower of Terror, what would you do? What could you do? In this video on Nerd Explains, I'll tell you 6 ways to beat the platform. First, what are the VSC's rules? You can bring one item into the VSC. It could be a knife, book, gun, rope, anything that could fit into a carry-on luggage bag. There's no TSA checkpoint before entering the Vertical Self-Management Center. You are randomly assigned to a floor level, and at the end of each month, the administration passes you, and you wake up at a new random level. You are randomly assigned cellmates, and unless your cellmate perishes, you stick with them when moving floors. If your cellmate just so happens to perish, you won't get a new one until the start of the next month. Food is served once per day on a table-sized concrete platform. It theoretically carries enough food for most levels if rationed correctly. If you try to hold or store any food after the platform moves to the next level, the administration will crank the thermostat knob in either direction, either freezing you or incinerating you. You can ride the platform down without consequence, but we're unsure about the ride up. Once the platform reaches the bottom, under level 333, it rockets back to the top. It would be a bad idea to try to catch a ride on it as it's going up.
I'd stand back if I were you.
Besides all of the above rules, pretty much anything goes, including murder and cannibalization. This is why you need to read the fine print before signing up for things. Okay, so how do we beat this? Kill everyone else. If everybody's dead, there can't be a food shortage. Depending on how sociopathic you are, or how long your sentence is, this could either be your first or last option. Actually, this is kind of what ended up happening when Goering and Baharat tried to enforce rationing.
Wait! Get off!
When lunchtime comes, hop on and ride the platform down with sharpened pieces of bed frame. Every level you go down, you'll have to eliminate 2 people. Now, here's the deal. You can ride the platform down, but riding the platform up is risky, as you don't know if the platform tops out at the tower ceiling, turning you into a pancake. I'd avoid riding up for now. So if you started on level 5 and killed everyone from 5 down to 333, where you currently reside for the month, you'll still get the same food as you would have on level 5, which isn't much of an improvement, but the next month, if you find yourself on level 200, there will be a lot less people above you eating the food, so you won't starve. Now, if the VSC has a large backlog of applicants, this will throw a giant wrench in the plan. Wait it out. If you only have a few months in the hole and you have some extra body fat, the probability of surviving and getting out is okay. Trying to buck the system will probably just end in your death. That said, the longer your sentence, the chances of death becomes extremely high. In the movie, it seems like the platform.
Living with schizophrenia, people wonder if I'm able to have a social life. They think I can't hang out with my friends. But I can. I DJ with my friends often. I feel good about treatment goals.
Talk to your doctor about schizophrenia treatment options.
Sometimes it can feel like there's no way out of treatment-resistant depression.
The platform only stays for a few minutes before moving on, so all the calorie-dense foods are going to be gone quickly, as people will be rushing to stuff their face and get as many calories in as possible before the platform moves. If you are placed on floor 111 or lower, you get almost no food. You effectively have only about a 30% chance of being placed on a level that gives you enough food to survive. We know Goering volunteered for 6 months in exchange for a diploma, and Trimagasi had a 1-year sentence. If you have 6 months, that means 6 chances. The average male weighs 190 at 5'9" and about 20% body fat. Essential levels of body fat to survive is about 5%. That means the average person has about 25 pounds of fat, or about 90,000 calories they can live off without food. Considering that same male will burn around 2,000 calories every day just sitting around in their cell, This gives your average male 45 days without food. This means that if you are placed on level 111 or lower, once you could survive, but twice you will starve. So 6 coin tosses. We need 5 tosses to land level 111 or above. As 2 tosses below 111 and we are dead, the chances of us being placed above floor 111 for 5 out of 6 months is 1.09%. Looks like solution number 1 actually isn't so crazy. In Trimagasi's case, he had some extra weight, so let's say he could survive 3 months without food. He had a 12-month sentence, so he'd need 9 months above level 111. His chances of survival is 0.17%. Since he survived so long, I'd say he should go get some lotto tickets after he gets out. But that's a hot hand fallacy, and he was stabbed to death. Ride the platform up. If you are too weak, old, or sick to perform solution number 1, and your sentence is longer than 3 months, so solution number 2 is out, then take the risk of being pancaked and ride the platform down, then back up. You could be murdered on the way down, but you don't really have many options here. Don't volunteer to do 6 months in a place that you know is called the Hole. There are references in the movie from characters having some knowledge about this facility and what it's called. Baharat brought rope, indicating that he knew the layout to some degree. Others brought guns and swords, indicating that they knew it was a dangerous place to be. And if you didn't know much, or you couldn't verify the conditions that you'd be placed in, that's a bad sign. And if you know it's called the Hole, don't volunteer. Your diploma is not worth it. If you generally knew what the Hole was, and you were stupid enough to sign up anyways, or you were sentenced, what could you bring to help you survive your sentence? Well, a weapon would help with solution number 1. Considering you'd potentially need to kill hundreds of people, you'd probably want to pick a reusable weapon like a sword instead of a firearm, unless you could carry a bunch of ammo. If you could carry a 22 pistol with a brick of 500 to 1,000 rounds, which isn't that large in size, you could eliminate everyone in the BSC multiple times over. Food could help with solution number 2 depending on how much you could bring, though you probably would not be able to bring enough food in a carry-on to help you survive more than 1 extra month. In a 6-month sentence, an extra month of food would raise your chances of survival from 1% to 7%, which is actually pretty significant. Ropes, grappling hooks, extendable ladders, etc. are all dependent on people above you to work, which makes them ineffective. To be honest, I can't think of much you could bring in a carry-on that would help much. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas. Climb up, but how? The chances that multiple levels of people would help you up is insane. Well, here's a possible idea. Fashion a rope out of the bed sheets and clothes, and then tie a huge knot at the end. Once the platform is about to stop at the level above you, throw the rope up. It will get wedged at the top by the platform. The people above will be too preoccupied eating as much as they can to notice. Then climb up the rope with the weapon. Once the platform starts to lower, quickly climb on top of the platform and then jump to the level above you. Then kill those above, as they will probably be mad that they have to share food with you and will sabotage your strategy. Rinse and repeat for every floor above you. You do have to be within 30 floors of the top, because the platform only comes down once per day, and you have 30 days before being randomly assigned to a new floor. If you do make it to the top and then they gas you and place you back in the hole, just revisit solution number 1. Those are my 6 potential solutions for how to beat the platform. Do you agree or disagree with my solutions? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe and make sure you always get the new videos coming out? I'll be doing more videos on how to survive and beat different situations like this from movies and games. Thanks for watching.
Get repair in one use. Meet Redken Acidic Bonding Concentrate, now with new intensive pre-treatment from Redken.
can do is to contribute something about our abduction or about the rules of If you were forced to participate in an alien sick game of who lives and who dies, what could you do? In this video on Nerd Explains, I'll tell you how to beat Circle. Very intimidating name, by the way. Circle. I'm gonna throw us onto one of the red circles and see how we fare. We don't have perfect knowledge and we don't know how this ends. We know what the characters know at the start. Can we beat this situation? Let's find out. For some reason, we wake up before everyone else. Maybe we're just more immune to alien tranquilizers. I don't know.
You're crazy. You're crazy. I like you. You're crazy.
All we remember is running from alien ships before we blacked out and were tractor beamed into the ship. We're in a circular room with a bunch of strangers. There are red circles underneath everyone, arrows pointing to each person in a black half dome in the middle of the room. We can't really see the rest of the room because it's too dark. There isn't much to go off of at this point. It's probably best that we just hang out and see what happens. Everyone is still standing, but asleep, until a lady wakes up. She's pretty bewildered and tries to step off her red circle. And she gets a nice warning buzzer that would make Dennis Reynolds flinch.
Hear this sound. And then,
Thought we were done with the buzzer.
only if you repeat an answer.
Even in this round?
Yes, even in this round. Yep.
She tries to touch another person and the same thing happens. Another woman wakes up, freaks out, steps off a red circle, and the black thing in the middle of the room shocks her with a red energy beam, dropping her to the floor unconscious. Now, it might be a non-lethal taser, but we get a good look at the lady who was beamed, and there's blood coming out of her eye. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I think that means she's either dead or she coincidentally suffers from hemolacria like the Bond villain in Casino Royale. We're gonna go with her being dead, though. This is weird because the first woman tested these boundaries and wasn't killed. She was warned by the buzzer. The second woman to awake was killed immediately when she stepped off. Why was the first woman spared but not the second? I mean, it's possible that this alien thing only allotted the entire group one warning for breaking a rule of touching and moving. A loud buzzer goes off and wakes everyone up. A dude freaks out, starts to run, and gets blasted. I mean, it's pretty clear at this point that we need to keep our hands and feet inside the circle at all times. From what we can tell, there are 50 participants with sparse recollection of how and why they are at the circle, other than they were running from alien ships, of course. You have all races, ages, classes, disabilities, professions, pregnancy statuses, etc. I'd say it's too random to be random. Everyone here was probably chosen purposefully because they are distinct from others in some way. A beeping countdown sounds off, and the plasma globe in the middle of the room kills another person, seemingly at random. There's no way this is random, though. What's the point of it being random? We inevitably realize that our hands are changing what arrow is lit up on the floor, and that closing our hands confirms our selection by evidence of a distinct beep noise. These arrows are pointing to other people. It's some sort of voting mechanism for who gets lasered next. We can only see and control our vote, so we don't know who other people are voting for. After 2 minutes pass,
Alpha F, the ultimate women's support pack, is finally here. A first-of-its-kind comprehensive pack formulated exclusively for the performance, wellness, and balance needs of the serious active female athlete. Welcome to Alpha F.
Looking to sell a ride? Sell happy with Acceleride. The easy way to sell your ride online. It's simple. We want to buy your ride. Any year, any make, any model.
another person is zapped. The person with the most votes. It doesn't take a psychologist to realize that this situation will devolve into discrimination, tribalism, and manipulation. It's probably best we just stay quiet. Once people realize that their vote kills people, anything we say or do will be used against us. People will look for any reason to take us out. Just like with the police, it's best we keep our mouths shut and not incriminate ourselves. This is not the time or place to go on a political or ideological rant, as we probably just piss people off and make enemies. We should also avoid lying unless we have to. It's better to stay quiet than to talk, but if we're pressed, it's better to lie than to admit to something that damns us. If we did commit a crime in the past, and the cop in the room does try to get us targeted to save his own ass, just deny everything. Nobody can prove anything.
This guy was she shouldn't have fucked around on me, man.
And stick to lies about opinions that nobody can disprove. If we have an unpopular opinion, just don't voice that shit. As we see in the movie, falsifying a marriage might sound like a decent idea. I mean, who would want to kill someone in front of their wife or husband? The problem is, it's a giant unmanageable lie. If anyone gets suspicious of us and questions the both of us, we'll easily get found out. Somebody just has to ask, what year did you vote against? And say it at the same time on the count of three, and most likely answer differently. If we get found out for lying, our chances of being marked to death goes through the roof. Surviving this game is obviously going to be heavily dependent on carefully choosing the words that come out of our mouth, or whether we say anything at all. The group begins choosing who lives and who dies in order to buy them time to figure out what to do, starting with the elderly, 2 minutes a pop. People with perceived low value, or people that are at the last rungs of their life, will be the first to go. If you are elderly, look sickly, don't speak the common language, have criminal-looking tattoos, your chances of surviving go way down. If you're a child or pregnant, your chances probably go up. We can't exactly control these things, though. This alien energy orb in the middle of the room is killing another person every 2 minutes. At 50 people in the room, that gives us 100 minutes before everyone is dead. Not a lot of time. Maybe if we can understand what's going on and the motivations behind this, a potential goal the aliens might have, we can find a way out of this in time. Other participants try to find out more info about each other so they can understand how things are related and why they're chosen. This part of the movie made me want to ram my head through the wall. You were on the clock. Spit it the fuck out, Beth.
I actually went to college, an English major, University of Virginia, go Wahoos.
Are you fucking kidding me? Go Wahoos?
Oh, I have a dog. Her name is Clutie, and she's a terrier mix. And that's
People are gonna die based on the time you take, and the words you need to be carefully and quickly selected. You chose the most valueless mix of sounds that you can. I'm not entirely sure nobody voted that round. The best thing we can do is to contribute something about our abduction or about the rules of the game. We'd provide value, humanize ourselves, but we won't reveal anything personal that people can use against us. You know, like saying you know another person because you're cheating on your wife with them.
We're, co-workers.
neighbors. Fair. Got it.
It's just like, why say that? Just keep that to yourself. Keeping quiet only helps us to avoid being aggressively targeted. The opposite is also true, though. If we are quiet and unhelpful, we can be targeted because the group doesn't see that we're providing any contribution or value towards solving the problem. We need to humanize ourselves, or else we'll be easier to kill. If we are tied with somebody else, we're probably going to be less likely to be killed. Seeing the aesthetic of the room, the voting mechanism, it's pretty reasonable to assume that this is some form of game, experiment, or intelligently designed means of selection. I mean, why set up a situation like this if you were simply going to exterminate everyone? We can probably rule out the circle as a means of selection based on the randomness and lack of clarity around the rules. If people are killed based on the flip of a coin, or because they happen to be the first person to break an obscure rule that nobody knew, how good can the selection be? I mean, shit, even Jigsaw announced his rules up front. This also means that there is no strategy that needs to rely on merit or morals. If you thought sacrificing yourself was a possible way to win the game by shooting people to fall into indignity, it's most likely not. Later on, this is somewhat confirmed as we didn't see anyone beam up to heaven to celebrate when James Franco for sacrificing themselves. successfully didn't vote. Unfortunately, this didn't stop the killings. Someone at random was shocked at the end of the round. What about voting for an empty spot from a previously killed person? Nope, someone at random was killed again. What if everyone votes for themselves? You can't, it just automatically selects the next spot to your left or right. You can, however, step off your red circle to sacrifice yourself if that's your thing. Doing so will reset the 2-minute countdown until someone is to be lasered again. What if everyone votes for the person to the right? Equal votes for everyone, forcing an all-participant tie. Well, we actually don't know what would happen. One guy defected and chose a pregnant woman instead of the person to his right. Another person saw this and voted for that guy, forcing a tie between the man and the pregnant woman. They revoted and killed the guy who defected, breaking the tie. It's fair to assume that if this strategy was successful, they'd all tie. And as we found out, if a tie occurs and is not broken, everyone tied will be killed. It's probably a good thing they didn't try this again. Based on our previous failed strategies and the rules we've discovered, the circle does allow for a scenario where one person can survive. If it comes down to 2 remaining people and one person does not vote, while the other does vote, or if one person sacrifices themselves, the next round will consist of only one survivor. And since you cannot vote for yourself, and nobody can vote for you, the last person might not be killed. Sure, we can end up lasered even as the last remaining person, but it's a Pascal's wager type situation where the only reasonable assumption and action to take is the one where we have a possibility of surviving. We can only assume that this is a last man standing type game. At this point, we might want to consider if we want to win, or if we can live with ourselves if we do win. Most likely, at some point, we'll have to vote out and kill a child. And you thought Monopoly ruined families and friendships, but as they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. Let's say we want to win, and be the sole survivor no matter the cost. In order to do that, the game needs to come down to 2 people at the end that won't tie each other. It's a type of prisoner's dilemma. If both people vote for each other, they both die. If nobody votes, it's a 50-50 that we die, which is still unpreferable. The only way that we can 100% survive is if the other person does not vote, then we vote for them. Vote or not vote. Well, a person is inclined to sacrifice himself, like Sean, or an elderly or sickly person. The problem is that they will most likely be voted out early on, so suggesting a vote for each of them scares them. What about someone we can fool into not voting? The circle is similar to a game called So Long Sucker, where the only way to win is by eliminating other players through the seed betrayal. Like in So Long Sucker, eliminating enemies is not as important as propping up gold allies that you can betray more easily in the end game. This is true in the circle as well. In order to fool someone into not voting, that person has to be gullible enough to believe that we will sacrifice ourselves for them, and that they don't need to vote as we'll step off our circle to be lasered voluntarily. Of course, we aren't going to sacrifice ourselves. As the countdown draws down, we distract them with some emotional last words and fake stepping off of our circle, and then at the last second we cast our vote for them, causing them to be killed off, leaving us a
Hey, fast crab, how you been doing? I ain't seen you in a long time.
not question sacrificing themselves for, like a pregnant woman or child. I know, it's fucked up, but I already said that winning this game comes at a cost, and whether you're willing to pay it is up to you. I'm also not saying that pregnant women or children are inherently more gullible. I'm saying that they're gullible because it's normal and generally accepted that people should sacrifice themselves for children or pregnant women in a lifeboat scenario. To put it in perspective, it would be much harder to convince the discount version of Jordan Belfort that you'll sacrifice your son for him. He has no reason to believe or trust you. Why on earth would someone sacrifice themselves for that person? They are arrogant, but they know it's against them for people to sacrifice for them. Hopefully I'm making sense here. They're gullible because it's a cultural norm for people to sacrifice themselves for them, and they are more likely to falsely trust you based on this. This game is as much about sociopathic charisma as anything. Once the game comes down to us and that other person who can control the emotional knob up, we need to distract them by telling an earnest but untrue story about how we lived a lot of life, and that we're okay with her living so that the baby can have a chance at life too. Maybe a story about how we should be the survivor as we killed someone in a drunk driving accident a couple of years ago, and that we're honestly not that great of a person, like faking a come to Jesus moment where we're okay with letting go of life. Tell her she needs to promise to make the best of things and to make sure her kid gets a great life. Ask her what she's gonna name her kid. Just get her mind off of any need to vote. If it's a kid, do something similar. They have a lot of life to live. We've already lived enough and want to give them a chance. Yada yada. We're essentially reaffirming that they don't need to vote as we're gonna sacrifice ourselves for them. It also helps that earlier on we set the groundwork for this and earn their trust, which I'll come back to in a bit. This sounds like a nifty plan, but how do we ensure that the game comes down to us and someone else we can fool into not voting? Suggest a voting direction that spares them. Most people would probably agree with us that nobody can paint us as being selfish and predatory. We also earn trust points with a child or pregnant woman. That will be important once it comes down to them and us, like we talked about earlier. While there is likely to be conflict with this suggestion, it's our best bet at getting the majority to spare them. We absolutely do not want the game to come down to us and sweater mess. He will 100% vote for us and cause a tie, getting us both killed. Hopefully we've effectively swayed enough votes in favor of protecting the child or pregnant woman. There are still a lot of people left though, so how do we ensure that we make it to the final round? There are some important, albeit counterintuitive aspects of the So Long Sucker game that can be applied to this circle. Overtly trying to win is actually an effective way to lose. If we are found to have gamed, betrayed anyone, or have a strong potential to influence the direction of the game, we will be targeted as a predator that needs to be eliminated in order to level the playing field. This is why we don't want to assume any leadership positions. Just make light units suggest you trying to develop a super strategy that leads ahead of everyone's moves and how the diverse everyone is. Given the complexity of the game, there are ways of interactions between people with dynamic mindsets and backgrounds. Too much of the game depends on randomness and luck. We simply can't compute the possible plays of everyone. If we try, we're likely to get too aggressive or make a mistake that reveals us as trying to game everyone else. The next best thing to do is give others enough room to make mistakes, or more realistically, enough rope to hang themselves with. People will get aggressive, lash out, prey on others, say stupid things, and discriminate in order to save themselves. All of these things are likely to get the majority to vote for them next. Probably the best way to ensure we make it to the final round is just to stay quiet and reserved. Subtly influencing the group to spare the pregnant woman or child is the most important play. As the participants get whittled down, our leverage goes up. Once it's down to a handful of people, the pregnant woman or child who hopefully trust us more than the others will vote in our favor in order to eliminate anyone they think will be selfish. They know they need someone who is willing to let them live, so they need to keep us alive, and will help us vote out anyone else that will be viewed as more selfish. This gets us to the final round. So, to recap, we've ensured our survival relatively quiet, and we've ensured the survival of another person that thinks we'll sacrifice ourselves for them. And now we can hopefully distract them and deceive them enough to where they don't vote. Once the countdown goes down, we cast that last-minute vote, killing them. And once we get returned to Earth, we'll probably want to go see a therapist and get some antidepressant medication. But hey, we won. If you've seen the movie, this is pretty much what Eric does in order to win. And from what I can tell, it's the only way. It's by no means a surefire way to win. You still have a super low chance of winning despite all of these strategies, and there are just too many dynamic variables and things out of your control. These people had 100 minutes to figure this out after being abducted, drugged, and chaotically forced into a life-and-death game. I'm almost certain I would die, at least in the same circumstances. I'm pretty sure I either overthought this or missed something completely. If you have a better suggestion for winning the death game in the circle, I'd love to hear about it, so please leave a comment. Thanks for watching. See you later. If the small-town escape room you signed up for turned out to be inescapable and your safe word didn't work, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made by the escapists, what they should have done differently, and how to beat the inventor in No Escape Room. The theme of this escape room is that this is the home of a man called the Inventor, who spent his life trying to communicate with the dead through various contraptions, drugs, and human test subjects. After they get locked inside, they soon find out this isn't a theme, and the inventor needs more human test subjects. Let's find out if we can escape what wasn't meant to be escapable. Before we get to it, I'm looking for a nerd who can help me make grotesque thumbnails that will almost get me blocked on YouTube. If you're interested, click my link in the description. Things aren't going well for Michael. He had made plans for a day of horseback riding with his teenage daughter Karen, but the backcountry range was closed when they arrived. Now, instead of forging fond family memories, they're broken down on a secluded stretch of highway out in the middle of nowhere. Rather than help out under the hood, Karen wants to I'm too cool for my parents who can't stays glued to her phone while blasting music. She's so committed to shutting out her father that she nearly walks in front of a passing tow truck without even noticing. The car trouble proves to be more than Michael can handle, and the two wind up at a nearby diner while the repair shop works to get them back on the road. Determined to salvage the one weekend he gets with his daughter for the month, Michael flips through a local newspaper in search of an activity they can both enjoy. Movies, mini golf, and bowling all fail to meet Karen Karen's strict standards of amusement. But then Michael lands on an ad for an escape room, despite his daughter's concern that it might be run out of some weirdo's garage. Michael commits to the activity on the spot, summoning a nearby waitress to ask for directions. The waitress's cheerful disposition gives way to an expression of concern. She warns them not to go, claiming that a lot of bad things have happened there over the years, and visitors are often never heard from again. She then busts out laughing and apologizes for scoring with them. The waitress explains that they're in for a hell of a time, and then casually walks off without actually providing any directions. Karen visits the bathroom before they head out. As she stands alone at the sink, a single bulb lighting the dingy lavatory begins to flicker, sending a chill up her spine. She hears a coin drop in one of the stalls and turns to investigate, but before she can discover the source of the noise, Betsy comes barging out of an adjacent stall and nearly door checks her. The waitress apologizes for the scare and then barely wets her hands before going back to handle people's food. Still a little weirded out by the strange sounds, Karen returns to the sink and collects her belongings. Obviously, training your kid to come around to the side of the car furthest from the road should have started before her age. Karen's lucky both her daddy and the tow truck driver were paying attention. Otherwise, this movie would have been a hell of a lot shorter. Michael's not all in the ball either. Why would you just drive out to a remote horse ranch without at least calling ahead to make sure they'll be open when you get there? Rural areas are often home to far more activities than you can give them credit for, but escape rooms typically aren't among them. Both Michael and Karen have a smartphone with service. They can go on Groupon or Yelp to find something to do at a reputable place. Had they used their phones like normal people, they likely would have landed on a safe, well-reviewed activity instead of the hellhole they're about to wander into. Now that our plans have changed, we should immediately notify our friends and or loved ones to let them know exactly what we're doing where. You know, basic common sense stuff. I'm not sure why it would be necessary to check out a bathroom stall over the sound of falling pocket change, but she should leave immediately if she feels unsafe. If she wants to investigate, she should just bend down and glance under the stall doors to see if anyone's there, instead of creeping closer to the door, putting her in range of being grabbed or hit by the door when it opens. As we find out later, there is a person creeping to the bathroom, and it's Karen. What this means and what would happen if she opened the door, I'm not too sure. Confused? You might want to strap in. We might be able to escape the no escape room, but we won't be able to escape the biggest, baddest, and scariest new boss that this video's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, added this month, the Hydra. Raid has over 600 champions that come from unique factions, each with their own history in the world of Teleria. Like, you can test out different champion team mixes to alter your strategies and playstyles, like including different support champions, fight battles, collect champions, and grow your clan using my link below. You are going to download Raid to your mobile phone or PC. There's a ton of fun to Raid this month. The Hydra is a super powered clan model with multiple different heads, and each head has unique mechanics. It can share the pain and push damage from itself onto your team. It can scare your champions and prop them from the inside, and cloak itself in a cloud of poison if the newest boss isn't enough. Raid's giving away these super limited edition champions to every player of the game, and its esports legend and Nami superstar Symbol and Symbol's limited edition channel for free by logging in for 7 days between now and January 28. Raid's also releasing awesome new champions, along with a brand new background horse ready for the faction of the Shadow Kid. There's a ton of events and tournaments, including a special fusion event where you can get one of Raid's newest legendary champions. Download Raid by using my link in the description or scan my QR code to get some free resources and a free mystery champion right away. All the treasure will be waiting for you here, and rewards will be available only for the next 30 days and only for new players. A cab drops Michael and Karen off at a large house out in the country. The place seems deserted, but Michael is certain this is where the escape room is. A few hard knocks yield no response at first, but then the door swings open, seemingly by itself. Upon walking inside, there's no sign of anyone around, until a woman suddenly materializes behind Karen's back and grabs her by the arms, demanding to know how they got inside and what they're after. Michael rushes to intervene, but the encounter is quickly revealed to be just part of the act. The strange woman, Josie, says that the others are waiting, and then
Former MasterChef contestants are back to win. This season's all about second chances. This is terrible.
My time to win it.
That's award-winning stuff. MasterChef Back to Win premieres tomorrow on Fox. Your mattress shouldn't jiggle. Theirs does. Tempur-Pedic doesn't, because Tempur-Pedic mattresses gently absorb energy to isolate motion. Instead,
it leads them down the hall, deeper inside the home. Michael and Karen meet up with the 3 other participants. Birthday girl Melanie, her phone-addicted boyfriend Tyler, and goodwill Chad. Andrew. Melanie claims to be an avid escapist, but it seems like her boyfriend only came along to get out of buying shutters open windows and pulls out an empty film projector as the silver screen flickers with disturbing images of disfigured corpses and grotesque medical experiments. Josie lays out a backstory to the escape room scenario. She explains that the local population was once plagued by bizarre and nightmarish visions of unknown origin. Doctors feared it to be an epidemic of mental illness, while the church placed the blame on satanic intervention. Ultimately, the source of this mysterious affliction was determined to be this very house. According to Josie's story, the property belonged to a reclusive inventor who moved out into the country to conduct experiments society wouldn't approve of. The town sends 5 people to investigate the inventor's home and put a stop to his activities, but none of them were ever seen again. Now it's up to the 5 participants to find the missing townsfolk and help them escape. Each of the escape rooms will contain a key to let them progress through the house. They have an hour to complete their task, but can leave the game at any time by saying the word awake. The film strip reaches its end, leaving the room pitch black. Melanie turns to the nearby lamp to reveal that Josie has disappeared. There are red flags popping off everywhere that should make us reconsider getting locked up in this person's basement. Firstly, the metal bars installed over the interior of the back windows in the main entryway. This is at minimum a fire hazard, and wholly unnecessary for an escape room designed to rely on their wits. Secondly, the fact that Karen was grabbed by the receptionist. Laws about touching somebody during an activity are pretty complicated. However, it's generally frowned upon, especially before signing a waiver. Thirdly, lack of payment requested up front. There's no free lunch or chai tea, and you're going to be paying somehow. It's usually best to not leave the terms of compensation vague and mysterious. I'm not saying the escape room operators will try to ransom you, but they might, and that's the best worst case. When it comes to the complimentary drinks, the steam could be explained away as dry ice added for the thematic effect, but yeah, I'm not going to be drinking that potentially laced tea, and I'm sure as hell not going to be giving up my phone. Risk of theft aside, something serious could happen that warrants a call to 911. I would just tell the hostess I left my phone in the car, or that I'm a Luddite and cell phones are the devil. Unless she's willing to strip search me, that should be all it takes to keep it. At minimum, the last text should be sent to your loved ones letting them know where you are, what you're doing, and when you'll be back to check in with them. You'll probably be dead by the time they notice you're missing, but in the event your captor likes to toy with you for a while, they might be able to get a rescue team to you in time. Escape room contracts are usually longer than a single page, and important legal and health information would be in plain text to protect the company from liability. Cutesy, period-accurate contracts are fine so long as you can read them, but if it's an illegible scrawl, no one should be signing this to make sure they don't wind up getting sewn to a human Sentai pad. Even though these escape rooms typically rely on wit and puzzle solving, it's always a good idea to be paying attention to how they lock you in and where they go, and how you can brute force your way out if the puzzle box stops working and nobody responds to your safe word. The shutters across the windows are operated by some sort of mechanical pulley system. This suggests that, at least in this room, the group might be able to use leverage to lift the plates off the unbarred windows, or wind the gears in reverse to lift the plates. Still a little shaken up from story time, the group make their way to the first of the escape rooms. It's a dusty old study lit up just barely enough to see. The door behind them swings shut with a mechanical clanking of turning gears. They're locked in. A buzzer then sounds on a nearby clock, showing 60 minutes remaining. With the game underway, the group begins searching the ancient clutter for anything that looks out of place. Almost immediately, Karen comes across a bottle labeled, which Andrew explains is a powerful hallucinogenic used by South American shamans to communicate with the beyond. The label is searching turns up an old vinyl album by Hot Kettle and the Jug Boys. At first, it seems like a red hot label of nature spin it up on a nearby green remote anyway. The music is terrible, but Melanie quickly connects the words of the song to the various symbols of a series of tribal masks hanging on the wall. After rearranging the masks according to the lyrics, a painting swings open to reveal a hidden saying. While everyone else sets out to find the combination, Tyler takes one of the masks off the wall and gazes disreputable operation at best. And honestly, that'd be all the excuse I would need to get disabled. Tyler's experience with the mask would be pretty frightening, sure. It could possibly be explained to some kind of holographic film covering the ice clones. That'd be pretty easy to verify by poking on the film or having one of the others take a look at the mask to see if they see the worms too. If they don't, it's pretty reasonable to it.
At Men's Warehouse, we'll help you look your best for wedding season. We'll help groomsmen look more groomed, proud fathers look more proud, officiants look more official, and best friends look better than ever. Men's Warehouse. Brakes are waiting on Top Gun Maverick. This is massive hard turning back. See it on the biggest screen possible.
To assume that the team was spiked, hallucinogenic, and everyone needs to be shouting coil. It's not too far-fetched, considering this establishment has even following the law. Each one of the escapees mentioned seeing a reference to hallucinogenics, which might have been inappropriately included for its relevance to the game's theme, as we find out soon. The safe word doesn't for the game. Game operators are clearly not playing fairly, not taking their guest safety seriously, meaning searching for the keys as a way to escape is probably a dead end. Literally, their only real option is to circumvent the game somehow, like brute forcing their way out by popping door hinges and knocking down the starting room door with anything they can find. The next room has a bunch of old clocks and much better lighting. Another buzz calls everyone's attention to the game timer, showing that they still have 50 minutes to finish the remaining rooms. In the center of the room is a strange device the inventor supposedly used to try to communicate with the dead. Melanie picks up the handset and attempts to make contact with whomever might be on the other side. At first, she thinks it's just a gag that replays whatever she says back to her, but then she hears someone talking freely in her own voice, and they want to speak with Tyler. Tyler begrudgingly takes the phone from Melanie. Her voice is still coming through the line, apologizing profusely, begging him to leave the house. Suddenly, Karen sees what looks like blood on Tyler's ear. He turns the phone to find a writhing mass of bloody worms clinging to the earpiece before tossing it away and he departs more in disgust. The handset breaks apart, revealing more fake blood inside, but there's no sign of any worms like Tyler claimed. Once again, he's certain he saw something no one else did, but this time he won't back down. Having had his little freaky shit, Tyler decides to call it quits and screams but waiting until the previous team finally opens to let him out. Melanie tries to go after him, but the door slams shut right in front of her. Neither of them convinced or concerned by the look of sheer terror on her boyfriend's face. Melanie decides to go on without him. The others aren't so sure, as Tyler's panic seems sincere. Andrew suggests that maybe the host spiked the tea that they were giving before the introduction, citing that they have no idea what they agreed to and when they finally signed. Melanie moves at it. She's determined to get another escape room under her belt and convinces the remaining participants to press onward despite the strange occurrences. This could all be explained as just a trick by a real escape room operator, such as using voice modulators to sound like Melanie, or hidden mechanisms on the phone could open to release fake blood and more worms. And if this is too much for Tyler, he shouldn't be playing the game, has every right to want to leave. Honestly, Tyler made the entirely reasonable choice to bail on the safe word after his hallucinogenic experience. This is exactly what you don't break unknown substances shady businesses are handing out, or sign agreements without reading and fully understanding what you're agreeing to. While Tyler's freakout seems sincere and their suspicion of Josie spiking the tea is a giant red flag, the federal level drug trafficking type of red flag, nobody has any reason to suspect anything truly sinister yet, and everyone's too wrapped up in the game's thick atmosphere to realize that they're waltzing deeper into the trap. Michael discovers that the keys on a nearby typewriter have been rearranged. Melanie determines it must be a cipher, so now they just need to figure out what to type in. Karen then notices one of the clocks is stopped at 10:12. Seeing the radio in the room, Melanie suggests that it must correspond to a specific station. They tune the dial to 101.2, and a man's voice begins reading off a random series of letters. When punched into the cipher, the input returns 5 lost from midnight. It seems like a stumper at first, but Karen figures it out. She turns the hands on the broken clock to read 11:55, and a key drops from below the face. Instead of unlocking the next escape room, the second key opens the door to a nearby closet. Karen starts digging through the piled up clothing on the floor and finds something wet. Suddenly, a hand reaches out from under a blanket and grabs her by the arm. The hand belongs to Josie, who seems to be suffering from a stab wound to her abdomen. As she bleeds out on the floor, she weakly warns everyone the inventor is here, and that if they don't escape the house before their hour is up, they'll be trapped inside forever. She tells them they master key, and then the closet door slammed shut on its own, locking her inside. While Andrew, Michael, and Karen are all shocked by what they just saw, Melanie shrugs it off as just another part of the game. Despite her protests, Michael decides he's had enough and shouts the safe word at one of the other doors. There's no response. Michael asks Melanie if it's common for escape rooms to just ignore the safe word and leave their participants trapped. Andrew brings up the fact that Tyler was allowed to leave, but Michael questions whether he actually made it out at all. Karen sides with Melanie and suggests that perhaps the doors aren't opening because Josie had to return to the front desk. She adds that it's quite a coincidence the closet door slammed shut before they could verify her condition. Either Josie's death was staged or she's really committed to staying in character. If it were real, why didn't she say something along the lines of, "I just got stabbed, call a freaking ambulance"? I suppose she could have been delirious from blood loss, but still, her exclaiming, "The inventor is here," is exactly what you would expect her to say if it were just part of the game. I would have smelled the spot on my hands where Josie grabbed me. Blood is a distinctive metallic odor that fake blood typically doesn't emulate. This would be a simple way to tell if she was really injured. If it's real, however, not only could someone end up dying, but whoever attacked them may be after one of us next. I would get someone to help me drag Josie out of the closet and throw the edge of the room to take care of her, and so the doors don't remotely shut on us like they have been, and then apply pressure to her rooms with clothes while asking what happens. How we can avoid a similar fate. Blood master, where is it? We should find out where she went with the bones, how to raise her in her place, and then there's a false back to the closet. With how into character she seems to be, she could try faking her death, in which case you want to check her pulse to ensure this isn't an insanely elaborate, borderline psychotic prank. Like Karen said, it's awfully convenient if the door would shut before they could investigate further. And said there's a lot of automated contraptions in the house, so it really could be a coincidence having a shot at that time. Real blood or not, the safe word not working is a clear sign something is wrong given the level of automation we've seen in the house so far. It's not like Josie would have to physically be touching the door to open it, even if it's just some kind of malfunction. That doesn't change the fact that we're trapped inside. At this point, I'd start breaking apart the lamps and furniture to fashion tools I could use to bust through the doors and door drywall. We'd find out pretty quickly whether it was all a hoax if Josie came out running to stop us from destroying her meal ticket. Plus, if there's really a murderer on the loose, it couldn't hurt to have something we can use to defend ourselves. Will it ultimately matter? It's hard to tell. The group decides to continue playing the game. Meanwhile, the timer on the wall buzzes again, showing that they only have 40 minutes to reach the end. With the last key only working on the closet door, they decide they need to think of another way to exit the current room. Andrew spots a small window above one of the locked doors, but he doesn't think it's large enough for anyone to make it through. Karen claims that she can fit and volunteers as tribute. I agree with the decision to ignore keys and find another way out. Maybe it's the forced perspective, but it looks to me like just about any of them could have squeezed through the window. At the very least, Melanie could have gone too. Barely any bigger than Karen, and who knows if there's puzzles on the other side that require more than one person to complete. Besides, if we're still not 100% sure someone wasn't just stabbed to death and left in the closet to die, we probably shouldn't be sending anyone anywhere alone. These are all the defenseless teenage girls. I would have dragged some of the furniture over to the door and tried sending everyone through the window. Really too small for anyone else to climb. house, Karen tells the rest of the group Josie's okay before following her into the darkness. Seeing no other way out of the room, Michael and